Do you know that when visiting the Palace of Versailles in Paris, one can see that the lavish palace has no bathrooms? Human excrement was thrown from the windows of the palace. On a holiday, the palace kitchen could prepare a feast for 1,500 people without the slightest concern for hygiene. In today's movies, we see the people of that era constantly blowing their fans. The explanation is not in the heat, but in the bad smell emanating from under the skirts, which were purposely made to contain the smell of private parts, since there was no hygiene. It was not common for them to bathe because of the cold and the almost non existence of running water. Only the nobles had lackeys to fan them, to dispel the bad smell that their body and mouth gave off, and to repel insects. Those who have been to Versailles have admired the vast and beautiful gardens. At that time, the gardens were not only conceived, but used as toilets during the famous ballads propagated by the monarchy, as there were no bathrooms. In the Middle Ages, most weddings took place in June, the beginning of summer for them. The reason is simple. The first bathing in the river of the year took place in May, so in June the smell of people was still tolerable. However, as some smells were very irritating, brides wore bouquets of flowers near their bodies to mask the stench. Hence the explanation for the origin of the bride's bouquet. Baths were taken in a single huge tub filled with hot water. The head of the family had the privilege of bathing first. Then, without changing the water, it was the turn of the others in the house in order of age, the women, and finally the children. The babies were bathed last, and when it was their turn, the water in the tub was already so dirty that it was possible to harm your health. The wooden beams that supported the roof of the house were the best place to warm animals, dogs, cats, rats, and beetles. When it rained, the leaks forced the animals to jump to the ground. Those who had money had tin plates. Certain types of food oxidized the material and caused many people to die of poisoning. Let's remember that hygiene habits were terrible back then. Tomatoes, being acidic, were long considered poisonous. Tin cups were used for drinking beer or whiskey. This combination sometimes left the individual on the floor, in a form of narcolepsy induced by mixing an alcoholic drink with tin oxide. Anyone passing by would think he was dead, so they would take the body and prepare for the funeral. The body would then be placed on the kitchen table for several days, and the family would watch, eat, drink, and wait to see if the dead person would wake up or not. A candle was also placed so the dead person was visible to everyone. Therefore, this custom appeared the vigil by the coffin. And something about England. It was a small country then, where there wasn't always room to bury all the dead. In time, the coffins were opened, the bones removed, placed in ramps, and the grave was used for another corpse. Sometimes, when the coffins were opened, it could be seen that there were scratches on the lids on the inside, indicating that the dead person had actually been buried alive. Thus, when closing the coffin, the idea came to tie a strip to the wrist of the deceased, pass it through a hole made in the coffin, and tie it to a bell. After the burial, someone remained on duty at the grave for several days. If the individual awoke, the movement of his hand would strike the bell, and thus he would be saved by the bell, a popular expression still used today. What we do today, we traditionally do without knowing the reason for it. We just continue the meaningless traditions, for example, like carnivals, Halloween. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Stay tuned for more interesting content.